Namaskar friends, and welcome to Fluent English Journey. I am Tom, and today I have brought a very special episode for you. What if one quiet day from 1900 could unlock your past tense instantly? In a moment, listen for 3 tiny phrases that make past tense stories flow. This episode is about a passing day. I will tell you what I did from morning to night. I will use slow English, simple sentences, and the past tense. Ready to picture every scene as if you were there? Okay, this story is for beginners. So relax, listen carefully, and imagine the day with me. You can pause the video and repeat the sentences after me. Pause, repeat, shadow. Morning. I woke up early in the morning. The sun was slowly rising. The first ray of light touched the window. Notice the rhythm. Short sentences make past tense feel easy. This year was not 2025. This year was 1900. There was no phone near my bed. There was no alarm clock to ring. I just woke up because sunlight came through the thin curtains. The bed was small. The blanket was heavy. Kept me warm at night, but the room was still cold. I got up slowly. My back was stiff because of the hard mattress. The room was very quiet. There was no sound of traffic. There was no sound of machines. Only the sweet sound of a bird came from outside the window. Keep listening, soon you'll hear the 3 phrases I promised. Washing. I washed my face with cold water. There was no bathroom. There was no sink. There was no hot shower. There was only a bowl filled with water on a small wooden table. I put my hands inside. The water was icy. I felt dizzy. I splashed water on my face. I felt more awake, but also cold. Phrase 1 to copy later. I felt plus adjective. I felt cold. I felt awake. Dressing. Then I put on my clothes. I did not wear jeans. I did not wear a t-shirt. Those clothes were not in my world. I wore a simple white shirt. I pulled it over my head and closed the buttons. I wore dark-colored trousers. They were made of thick cloth. On my feet I wore heavy shoes. The clothes were not new. They had small holes. The stitches were old, but they were strong. They kept me safe during the day. Pattern. I wore. They had. Outside. I opened the window. Fresh air came in. The air was cold. The road outside was quiet. A horse passed by. The horse was pulling a wooden cart full of vegetables. There was no bus. There was no car. This was the beginning of a new day, in the year 1900. Short, clear pictures equals strong listening practice. Breakfast. After dressing, I went to the kitchen. The kitchen was small. There was a wooden table in the middle. There was no fridge. There was no electricity. The only light came from the window. On the table there was bread, butter, and milk. The bread was hard and brown. It was baked a day before. The butter was soft, but a little salty. The milk was fresh. I sat down. My family sat down with me. We did not have a plate for everyone. We shared. I cut a piece of bread. I spread butter with a small knife. The butter melted slowly, because the bread was still a little hot. Phrase 2 to copy later. There was slash there was bread. There were holes. Close-ups of bread, butter, steam. A day in the past. 1900. Namaskar, my friends, and welcome back to Fluent English Journey. I'm Tom, and today I have a very special story for you. Imagine opening your eyes in 1900. No phone, no noise, just life. This story is about a passing day, a simple day from the past. I will tell you what I did from morning to night. I will use slow English, simple sentences, and the past tense. Same focus, past tense, simple rhythms, clear pictures. This is for beginners. So sit back, listen carefully, and imagine the day with me. You can pause anytime and repeat after me. Pause, repeat, shadow. Morning. I woke up early in the morning. The sun was slowly rising. The first rays touched the window. The year was not 2025. The year was 1900. There was no phone beside my bed. There was no alarm clock to ring. I woke up because sunlight came through the thin curtains. The bed was small. The blanket was heavy. Kept me warm at night, but the room was cold. I rose slowly. My back was stiff from the hard mattress. The room was quiet. There was no sound of cars. No sound of machines. Only the sweet sound of a bird outside. One more phrase is coming that makes storytelling smooth. Washing. I washed my face with cold water. There was no bathroom. There was no sink. There was no hot shower. There was a bowl filled with water on a small wooden table. I put my hands inside. The water was icy. I felt dizzy. I splashed water on my face. I felt awake but also cold. Phrase 3. I plus past verb plus object. I washed my face. I opened the window. Dressing. Then I put on my clothes. I did not wear jeans. I did not wear a t-shirt. Those clothes were not part of my world. I wore a plain white shirt. I pulled it over my head and buttoned it. I wore dark trousers made of thick cloth. On my feet I wore heavy shoes. The clothes were not new. They had small holes and old stitches. But they were strong and safe. Sound natural. Short sentences equals confidence. Breakfast. I opened the window. Cold. Fresh air entered the room. Outside. A horse pulled a wooden cart full of vegetables. There was no bus. There was no car. After dressing, I went to the kitchen. The kitchen was small. A wooden table stood in the middle. There was no fridge. There was no electricity. The light came only from the window. On the table there was bread, butter, and milk. The bread was hard and brown, baked yesterday. The butter was soft and salty. The milk was fresh. I drank a cup of milk. It was creamy and thick. Its taste was different from today's milk. It was natural, without sugar. My father ate quietly. He had worked late the night before. My younger sister chewed bread slowly and smiled at me. The room was simple, but we were together. Sometimes the simplest moments teach the strongest English. Work. After breakfast, I wore my coat and left the house. The wind was cold. I said goodbye to my family. The road was made of stone. My shoes made a loud sound with every step. I did not take a bus. I did not drive a car. There was no bus. There was no car. I walked as always. On the way, I saw a woman sweeping her steps. A boy carried a bucket of water from the well. 2 old men sat on a bench, talking slowly. The air was fresh. The smell of bread came from a shop. The smell of horses came from the road. I walked for 30 minutes. At last, I reached the factory on the edge of the city. Picture the scene. Sound, smell, slow steps. The factory was big. Its walls were black with smoke. Inside, machines made a loud, endless noise. The air was thick. It was hard to breathe. I worked with many others. Some washed wood. Some worked with metal. Some pushed carts. I lifted boxes and heavy wood. It was hard work. My hands turned red. My shirt grew dirty with dust. The boss walked past. He wore a cap and carried a stick. He said little. He only looked at us carefully. We worked for hours without stopping. At noon, we had a short break. I sat on the floor. I ate bread and cottage cheese from my pocket. I drank water from a small metal cup. Then I stood up and worked again. The hours were long. My back ached. But I continued. Life was hard, but work was necessary. At last, the bell rang. The day's work ended. Hear the pattern. I plus past verb. Keep it simple, keep it strong. Evening. I left the factory. My clothes were dirty. My shoes were heavy. I walked home slowly. The sun sank in the sky. The wind grew colder. Children played with cloth balls. They laughed and screamed. Women washed clothes in buckets of water. They rubbed hard and talked together. A man sold apples at a stall. People stood in a line to buy. The smell of food came from open windows. I looked at the sky. Turned blue, then orange, then red. The colors were beautiful. But they also said night is near. One last picture before we close the story. When I reached home, smoke rose from the chimney. I opened the door and stepped inside. A fire burned in the fireplace. After the cold outside, the room felt warm. The table was ready. We ate simple food. Soup, bread, and vegetables. The soup smelled of onion and carrot. I dipped bread in the soup and ate slowly. My family sat around the table. We talked about the day. My father spoke of his work. My mother spoke of the house. Sometimes we laughed even when tired. After dinner, we stayed together. There was no TV. There was no radio. We told stories. My father told us about his childhood in the fields. My sister played with her doll. My brother cleaned his shoes for the next day. The fire crackled in the fireplace. The candle gave us light. Shadows moved across the wall. Later, the house became quiet. The fire grew smaller. The candle burned low. We all went to sleep. I lay in my small bed with a heavy blanket. I felt its warmth again. Outside, the night was silent. No cars. No machines. Only the sound of the wind. I closed my eyes. I thought about the day. Life was not easy, but it was real. A simple day in the past. Full of family, food, and ordinary work. And then I slept. The three helpers you heard. There was slash there were. I felt plus adjective. And I plus past verb plus object. Closing. Okay, my friends, that was my story. A past day. Not fast and modern, but simple, hard, and quiet. From sunrise to fireplace, short sentences carried the past tense. Thank you for listening to Fluent English Journey. I hope this story helped you practice the past tense. Keep learning, keep practicing, and always believe in yourself. Which sentence was easiest to shadow today? Subscribe for the next story, same slow English, new pictures. Until next time, goodbye for now.